It's in that parking structure over there that Jaden Jackson, a 28-year-old, was chased down the ramp by several men in a car and shot to death. It happened last month. It was just one of the many recent, very high-profile murders we've seen in the city, and that's what has us talking today. Now, one criminal lawyer and former Crown attorney we talked to had some ideas on what he'd like to see done when we've seen the number of shootings that have increased. They're up 20% this year compared to last year. Now, John Struthers says one of the big things we need to do is help out those who end up in prison to avoid that cycle of violence.
People say soft on crime and, club fed, and jails shouldn't be places that are kind. But jails are violent, nasty places. I mean, some of the jails are actually called gladiator school because of the number of shivs and homemade weapons. It's terrible. And these people are being put back on the streets with little or no hope, no training, no new education, and no new plan. So you're really just putting them back in exactly the same situation that they came out of. There's a very good case, and I know he won't mind me mentioning his name, of a gangster by the name of Jose Alejandro Vivar, who was the head of one of our local gangs, frankly, who went into jail and got, of course, figured it out. And he's now running a very successful exercise program, an exercise club, which is doing very, very well. And, people do reform. People do come to figure out that this is either a dead end one way in jail or the other way you're literally dead. There's only two ways out of the gang culture, and that's jail and death. It's a short-lived life for sure. And so people do get the message, and people do figure it out, but it's very difficult, and you have to give them an alternative route. You have to give them education, you have to give them employment, you have to give them hope that there will be something else that they can do that isn't going to be obviously as productive as this.
And coming up in a few minutes, we talk to Struthers about his controversial idea to help fight the gun violence in our city and elsewhere. It was last month that Jaden Jackson was chased down that parking garage there and shot to death by several suspects. Now, it was one of the high-profile murders that we've been talking about that have happened in the last little while. Of course, shootings in this city are up 20% compared to last year, and more than that over the last 5 years, the average of those last 5 years. I've been talking to John Struthers about some ideas. He's a criminal lawyer and a former Crown, about what he'd like to see done when it comes to prisons and avoiding that cyclical violence that we see. But he also has one controversial idea that he thinks would help rid a lot of the gun violence in our city and the country.
It's about money. Unfortunately, the war on drugs creates warriors. You have gangsters fighting over turf in various jurisdictions, and it's about large sums of money. And unfortunately, if we have an illegal world out there by making drugs illegal, you have people making a fortune selling them on the street corners and in their particular neighborhoods. The same arguments that are being made to legalize marijuana can be made for all drugs, which is it takes the money away from the gangs, it takes the money out of the streets, and it regulates and controls the action. We're in a situation where people are dying of drug overdoses, unfortunately, because fentanyl is so powerful. When you interdict heroin, people go to a more readily transportable drug like fentanyl. People don't know what they're taking, and they're dying of overdoses. The entire theory of the war on drugs is actually causing part of the problem. The rules may change, but in fact, people are going to take drugs regardless. And if you look at Portugal, you look at Switzerland, you look at Holland, in fact, drug addiction has gone down because people who are not in the shadows can get help, can get counseling, can get treatment. And they're not on the streets committing crimes to get their drugs. So as a result, in fact, looking at the evidence, addiction actually goes down when you regulate as opposed to try and use the criminal justice system as the big hammer to try and solve a problem that really takes fine-tuning.
So legalizing all street drugs is what he would like to see, but he also says more social programs are needed to engage at-risk youth in various neighborhoods, and more programs as well for those in prison.